Welcome back to the Adventures of a Disney Dad podcast. We've made it to episode 10. My name is Matt, and I'm a dad of three and the founder of adventuresofaDisneyDad.com and a travel agent with the Magic for Less Travel and your host. I'm joined by my co-host, Chip Robinson. As always, soon to be dad of five. That's going to be going away when we have the baby soon. Chip, how's everything going tonight?
Going well. Advanced again in the playoffs. So we play Lake this week, who's a Stark County rival. And then next, if we win, we'll be playing for the regional final next week. So big week.
What is that? That puts the Massillon Tigers 3 games away from the state championship?
4. This week will be 4. We'll be 4. So 16 weeks, we're 12-0.
Awesome. You love to see it. And we are joined tonight by special guests, Audie and Tim Lawley, travel agents with the Magic for Less Travel and grandparents of 5. And they've joined us because this week we're going to be talking about all things multi-generational trips. So trips with grandparents, something that Chip and I both love to do. I think every trip I've been on since I've had kids has been a multi-generational trip. Audie and Tim, like I said, I have 5 grandkids. Welcome to the show. We appreciate you coming on. How are you this evening?
Yeah, we're doing well.
Awesome. So by way of background, you guys are travel agents with the Magic for Less Travel, and you kind of do this as a team. Is that right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We've been in the industry for 16 years. 16 years, and we've been doing it together the whole time. It started out as kind of our side hustle, turned into my full-time job, and Tim still does all of the marketing and most of the face-to-face meeting with the guests because he does really well with the guest.
Awesome. And so how did you guys get started into the Disney world, the travel agent world?
Well, Tim went as a child and I hadn't. And so we took our kids when he had hit a kind of a career milestone and because his other hat he wears is a CPA, and he had kind of hit a career milestone. And so we wanted to celebrate by taking our kids to Disney. They were 10 and 9 and 5. And we took his mom and dad with us. So way back then our first trip was a multi-generational trip and we fell in love with it. And so like many, we became known as the Disney people in our little go-to group of friends and acquaintances. And that turned into constantly helping people explore Disney. And then one day out of the blue, we got a call from a choir director for my niece's choir in South Texas. And she had signed them up, gotten the commitment money from the school. Everything was in place for their 78-piece choir to sing at Magical Music Days. But she had done no planning. And it was 4 weeks away. And she was told by many in my sister's group of friends that we were Disney people. And so we jumped in with both feet. We were not travel agents, but my previous career was as a children's pastor. And so I had experience, putting together large groups that involved children. And so I knew the safety, I knew the parameters, I knew what we needed to do, and we knew Disney. And the next thing we know, in about a 7-day period, we had planned a 5-night trip to Disney World for 78 people.
78 sponsors.
Yeah.
That is jumping in. There is no doubt about it.
Yes. And for all of those listening, don't do that. No, the liability, all of those things. We were just helping my niece and my sister. But we didn't represent ourselves as travel agents. We just said, yeah, we can help. But that really opened the door for us to others who wanted to travel and said, y'all need to do this. And so we found a way in and haven't looked back.
Awesome.
That's incredible. It's a fun story. And I guess, so you've done Disney the entire time. I know from knowing you guys personally at the Magic for Less that you guys also do a host of other things. You guys love to cruise. And I think you guys have been traveling like crazy lately. Is that right?
If the tax calendar is favorable, we're gone.
Spoken like the true CPA. Tim,
Yep.
By way of background, I'm a lawyer, so that's my other hat.
Yeah,
So I can appreciate that for sure. Where'd you guys go on your most recent trip?
We did the Disney cruise from Hawaii to Australia. And then
Gosh.
we tagged on this Ventures by Disney did a short escape in Sydney, which we also did. And then when we came back, we broke up the trip by flying back to Hawaii for a couple of days at Aulani before we came home. So it was a long trip, but it was very, very, very relaxing.
How long was the cruise? That's what I.
It was 14 nights.
Okay.
Well,
Or
Wow.
13, or it might have been 15. The whole international dateline thing just.
you went to bed on a Friday, and when we woke up, it was Sunday. So
Oh,
that was kind of a day just disappeared. It all came back when we flew home from Sydney, and we
Yeah.
left Sydney at about 10 or 11 o'clock on Halloween night, and arrived in Hawaii at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning of Halloween. So it was our longest Halloween ever.
Yes. And we have
Chip is our resident cruise guy. I
Oh, yeah.
don't know if you guys saw in the news, there was a BBC video today on social media about a cruise ship that was having trouble going through a storm.
Oh,
And
boy.
I see stuff like that, and I just can't. I just can't do it. But
The
Chip,
water cruise ship is an amazing thing. They can ride out most of the bad weather, but ours was basically smooth sailing. We had one, our last day getting into Sydney, we had some rough weather, but it was we've definitely experienced worse. So no big deal.
Awesome.
Yeah, Chip's convincing me for sure. So before we get into our main segment, I want to touch a little bit, as we do weekly, on the news, the main news points of the week. And I'm not going to touch on the terrible cruise ship experience that the BBC posted. But jumping into the Disney and Universal news, first, cast member person-to-person pin trading is back after a 3-year hiatus. For now, it is limited to Disney Springs. For those of you that are into pin trading, it's a welcome sight, I'm sure, and also probably one of the last bits of COVID that we'll see go away. Disney has cracked down on third-party tour guides, in part due to alleged DAS pass abuse. For those of you that are familiar, there's been a little bit of a crackdown on DAS passes in general. Recently, I think for some segments of the Disney community, it's a welcome sight that they're cracking down on these things. But I think in general, the VIP tour guides through Disney are fantastic. They're well worth the money. They get you to the front of the lines, similar to Lightning Lanes and Genie Plus. They are more expensive than the third-party tour guides used to be, but they're official. And they also give you a lot of entertainment and backstory that you may not necessarily see from some of these third-party tour guides. So, Audie and Tim, I'm sure you guys are advocates of the VIP tours at Disney. They're fantastic. Have you guys done one?
Yes, we've done
a few of them, and we've done the private tours as well as some of those specialized tours. And I'll tell you, my favorite part was getting in the van. So when they move you from park to park, they park a van in the cast only area, and they walk you through a back door, and there's this nice air conditioned van waiting for you. And you get in, and they have a cold bottle of water and a cold towel.
Oh man.
It's the little things sometimes,
Yeah,
and
just a frozen towel. That's all we need when it's.
I said, how hard can it be to get these on the buses, y'all?
But no, those are a great investment when you don't have, or you don't want to spend all day walking all around the parks. You just hit the big ticket items. I mean, it does cost a little bit, but it is a great investment.
It is.
And I think you have 10 people or 12 people. So if you can split it up that way, that's not a bad idea either.
No, it's really worth the time and the cost.
It is.
The biggest thing, go ahead, Audie.
Well, and I was going to say too, pre-COVID, there was also the ultimate day of thrills and the ultimate day of family adventure. And so they were private tours, and they were small groups. They were not as small as the private tour, and it was a set itinerary, but it's also a great way to hit the highlights. And it's a smaller investment, but it's a good way to hit those, and it's a good way to hit those highlights and have fun with your family. So
For sure.
Yeah, and I think there's the number one thing is that from everybody that I've ever talked to that's done a VIP tour, I've never had anybody have a bad experience.
Right.
Which
No.
I think says a lot about that. And the other thing is that it's really the conversation that means the most in those experiences. It's not getting to skip the line to ride Space Mountain or get from one part to the other faster. All those things are great, but it's the history and the background that only these cast members that do this every day can give, that I
Yeah.
think makes it special.
No,
La-
nothing happens in Disney without a story.
there you go.
So
There you
they're going
go.
to give you the backstory of the Tower of Terror. They're going to give you the, the history of, the roller coaster that you're going to go see, whether it's Space Mountain or Tron or whatever. So, yeah, it's more than just front of the line access, for sure.
And they do it in a way that's not what you're going to read on Wikipedia or on any other website, which I think makes it special. Last, and this is kind of near and dear to my heart, Universal Orlando announced the return of Mardi Gras for 2024. It's going to be, the dates are going to be February 3rd through April 7th. They have not announced bands for the concert series yet, or any of the other specifics of the event, but we do have dates. Chip, I know because you haven't been to Universal in a while. Audie and Tim, do you guys like to go down for Mardi Gras?
No, it's
Tax
season. So
Fair enough. I should have known.
After April 15th.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen for us. Sorry.
So I will just say one of the first trips when I was actually an adult and away from my own family that I went back to Universal and to Disney. We went during Mardi Gras and we got to go to Matchbox 20 was playing.
Oh, wow.
And I got to tell you, like, the environment that they set up there for those concerts, it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. And in part because, there's a roller coaster going behind the band and it's very intimate, it's standing room only and you kind of get there early to get your best spot or whatever. You don't have a specific seat. Very similar to the Hubgrass over there at Universal. And it is a really, really special time. So if you ever get a chance to catch a concert at Universal, they do it right. And it's a lot of fun. And to this day, my in-laws and my wife will tell you it's one of the best concerts we've probably ever been to, just because it was such a cool experience. So I definitely recommend it for anybody that gets a chance to go. So now we're going to jump into the main content for this week's episode. We're going to be talking multi-generational trips and understanding the needs and really getting into some tips for families that are going in larger groups. So I guess just to get us started, the biggest thing that I think I hear most often is that, the grandparents want to move a little bit slower sometimes. But the biggest complaint I hear is trying to find dining reservations for large groups and large multi-generational families. Audie and Tim, when you guys have guests at the Magic for Less, or even for yourselves and your 5 grandkids and 2 kids, how do you handle dining reservations at Disney in particular?
Well, Disney kind of created this beast with the dining, and it's you feel so pressured to get like the perfect dining. And so the first thing we've done each time we've gone with our kids and our grandkids, which has been many times to Disney World, is to say, let's choose some priorities and then a backup and then a backup. And then, nobody's terribly disappointed if the perfect plan doesn't come through. And then the other thing, especially those first trips we went with our kids and their kids, was we had to tell ourselves they don't know what they don't know. And so if we didn't get Cinderella's royal table, our little princess would have never known. She didn't know what she was missing. We did. And while we, wanted that perfect experience for her, we didn't go to Cinderella's royal table with Lily the first time. We went to Akershus Royal Banquet Hall, and she thought it was the best ever. She danced with Mary Poppins. She twirled all around. I mean, Mary Poppins took her by the hand and led her through the restaurant, and they twirled and danced and sang, and it was really sweet. And so the one thing we try to express to our guests from our own experience is take the pressure off yourself and just know that one experience you have set in your head, no matter how many people tell you it's all going to be blown unless you do this, it's really not. And that it's okay. It's okay. And then just know that, sometimes it's a little tricky. You have to do multiple dining reservations, but the good folks at Disney are so good. I mean, especially if you stand there at the podium with your adorable grandkids, we're 2 reservations, but we're one family. And then you get the grandkid to go, please don't make me not sit with grandma. No, I'm just kidding. They are really, really good about combining families and at the least putting you near to each other.
And
So
getting
do
out
you,
it early
Yeah.
at the opening of your window is key. If you try to go close in, you're not going to have much luck.
and yeah, and Chip, we talked about that a little bit last week. Like if you not only getting at your window, but trying to focus at the beginning on the back end of your window when it hasn't opened up for some other people kind of helps with those bigger groups. But Audie and Tim, do you guys start out trying to get the entire group and then seeing if you have to split it up into, like if you have 7, for example, splitting it up into 4 and 3 after you can't get a 7?
Yes, yes. And we make sure always that we have a table that's at least big enough for us and the grands. Because what parents wouldn't say no to having a table of their own in a nice
That's
restaurant? We have always tried to do, when we have to split it, we'll say, okay, like our son's family has 3. We'll say, okay, we need at least a table of 5 and a table of 2. And we're always able to do it that way. But
We've never had to.
no, we've never had to, much to their chagrin, we've never had to go without the parents at the table. But they do manage to find a way to sneak off and have a nice.
I think that's a really great idea. And just in case anybody's not aware, the idea there is, you split up the 2 reservations, 5 and 2 or 4 and 3 if you've got a group of 7, and you try and make them within like 15 or 20 minutes of each other. And then you go to the front desk podium and you kind of explain the situation like, hey, we're actually a party of 7. Is there any possibility of us sitting at the table together? And Disney is usually pretty fantastic about, if they can't put you at the same table, they do keep you guys close and things like that. I've never heard of a really bad experience, but obviously they won't guarantee anything, and we certainly won't either. Chip, you've got a big crew. Do you have any thoughts on kind of some of your strategies or tips?
We're buffet people, just to simplify options, I guess, is probably one of our things. And so we'll normally do a buffet, but if we want to get something, we're going to go at the end, like a homecoming or I don't know, boathouse, something like that. We're going to try and get that at the end. We've had the same luck. We don't split up. I guess we were a family 6 this last year. We were going to be a family of 9 this summer with my in-laws and my sister-in-law, but stuff with them is going to back out. So it's just going to be us as a family of 7. But so it'll be interesting. I guess we'll see what we can get. But I have go-tos that I don't have an issue getting us a table of 7, like going over to Boma. I could probably go to Boma every night. We love it. We love it.
Good. One thing to remember too is when you are like, if you're a family of 6 and you can't find 6, try to book a 5, because there's no such thing as an odd numbered table. They're always going to have an even number of chairs. And so if you're a party of 4 and you can only find a reservation for 3, you're still going to have a table with 4 chairs. And they're not going to say, no, your 4th person can't come in. It has to do with the dining program. And it has it actually counts heads in a restaurant, not tables. And so it has to do with the fire code and how how the matrix bends and everybody's in their black jackets and all of that stuff. It's a little weird, but it's because so sometimes like a family of 6 can find a reservation for 5 and book that 5. It's okay. Yeah. You're going to get a table with 6 chairs.
That's probably my biggest tip, and you stole it from me, Audie. And I love it. And the reason why I love that one in particular is because technically you're supposed to include babies in your reservations, and they're not ticketed. So some people they can get really confused. Like, my baby doesn't have a ticket, why would I include them in a dining reservation? But then when you get there and you make a dining reservation for 5 plus a baby, the baby has a high chair. Really, you can sneak in 2 in that scenario because the baby's going at the end of the table. So as Audie said, like if you've got 5, but only 4 are adults, if you can get a reservation for 3, you're going to get that table of 4, and then you can put the baby at the end.
Yeah.
And it literally always works. And I hate to kind of tell people that, because I've had a couple of times where the cast members looked at me like, you're adding 2 to this reservation. when you get up to the front, but they're always really good about it, particularly with the babies and stuff like that. It works out.
That just blew my mind because we have 2 that won't be counted. All right, so that I've got to figure it out now. Thank you.
I think the only time we've ever had like an issue is we did a rodeo roundup barbecue. We had to wait a little bit because we had to add 2 to, and that's a really hard reservation to get. And we had to add 2, the baby and my brother-in-law, and the seating there is a little bit different because they've got a large bench seating.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily work that same way where they've got the number of chairs, but they were still great about it. And they, we waited 20 minutes or so and got a table, and they were fantastic, as Disney, always is usually. So jumping into, I think probably my favorite category, and I think where we probably want to spend a lot of our time tonight. How do you guys decide which resort you're going to use for a large multi-generational trip? And then getting down into the nitty gritty, I want to touch base on, like, are you guys booking adjoining connecting rooms? Are you staying away from each other? How much time are you guys spending in rooms together? Are you getting a suite or a villa at Saratoga? I want to know all the things. So Audie and Tim, like, I guess break it down from the beginning. You've got a trip you want to go on with your grandkids. How do you guys go about figuring out where you're going to stay?
Well, when we're doing the trips with the grands, we normally
With the grands and their family, or just the grands?
Well, yeah, we've done it. We had this plan when we first had grandchildren come into the mix that we would like to take each grandchild to Disney on their own when they were 5. And when the first grandchild got to be 5, the parents of said grandchild said, "No, that's too young. You have to take all of us." And so they extorted us into taking that first grandbaby trip with the siblings and parents. And so we ended up moving our plan back. When they turned 10, we could take just the grandchild by themselves. So
I love the extortion.
Yeah,
I love it.
we got our way. So I'll talk about the ones we do when it's just, when it's just the grandchildren and us. We will let the 10-year-old decide where they want to stay. That we just get out the resort map and let them see, the theme and the proximity to what park and all that, and let them decide. They want to go to Saratoga Springs. They want to go to Animal Kingdom Lodge. They want to stay at the Polynesian. That's
art animation. We just show them everything and say, where do you want to stay? And full disclosure, we are DVC members, but we tell them all, we don't have to stay at a DVC resort. If you see one you want to do, we will do that. And they've picked. And then when we had us and the kids, our kids and their kids, we used our DVC and stayed in a villa. Because I will tell you, and all the grandparents out there are going to shake their head and nod, when your kids move out and are out on their own, and it's a rare thing to have everybody under one roof. And so for me, I want my family under one roof. And I know it's a selfish thing. And our kids have said, well, we could do this, or maybe we could do a couple of deluxe studios. And it's like, nope, you want to go? This is where we're staying. But again, we let them pick.
So when you guys do the full family, grandkids and your kids, you guys stay in one room together, and you let your kids pick.
Essentially,
we let the grandkids pick.
We
See, that couldn't fly in my house.
A little bit, but
we would end up in a Lion King suite when the Polynesian is an option, and that just would not fly with me.
But we do select the vacation villas offer the perfect alternative to having everybody under one roof. You get a 2-bedroom villa, and that will accommodate our family group just fine. Everybody gets their own accommodations, and so, but yet there's that one common area where we can all have breakfast together, or sit around and talk about what we did when we get back from the park at night. So that's kind of how we've approached it in the past.
And it is important to go ahead, Chip. Go ahead.
That's what we're doing right now. So we're going in the summer. We're DVC members as well, and we're watching videos. Like, we were on YouTube, like we've been the last 2 nights. All right, so our options, and I texted Matt earlier yesterday. I said, all right, 1-bedroom Bay Lake Tower, or we can go 2-bedroom Boardwalk or 2-bedroom Beach Club. What are we talking? Like, the kids are watching the videos. They're looking at the slides, they're looking at the pool. My wife's asking about dining.
Yeah,
So that's something we do.
that's like planning the Normandy invasion sometimes when you start putting all the myriad details together. And who are you going to give voice to? Whose opinion are you going to value the most when it comes to I want to stay in the Epcot area, I want to stay at Magic Kingdom area, I want that great resort pool at Yacht and Beach Club. I mean, it's a little bit of a juggling act for sure.
Oh yeah.
And one of our grands actually chose Disneyland instead of Disney World. And so we did his 10-year-old trip at Disneyland. And now everybody wants to go to Disneyland because that's all he can talk about. So
That's fun.
yeah.
And I just want to note too, the villas and the 2 bedrooms are not limited to DVC folks. They are, a lot of times they're the DVC resorts, but people get confused that you can actually book those. I'm not DVC, and we booked for a multi-generational trip. Our January trip is a 2-bedroom villa at Saratoga with my in-laws, and it's going to be our first time staying in the same room. Obviously you each have your own bedroom, and like Tim said, you have the common area, which is, I think, going to be great. And I know my in-laws are really looking forward to it. I think for the parents are usually the ones that are always a little, hesitant, just because when you've got your kids, the way that they can invade everybody's space, and then, it can get a little dicey. But we did a separate trip where we were at Kidani and my in-laws were at Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Oh, nice.
And it was a great trip, as all Disney trips are. Well, we're a very positive podcast, but being that far apart, especially for those 2 resorts, they're very far apart. It creates challenges a little bit. Getting people out the door can be problematic, and kind of letting the grandparents know when the kids are ready, the kids being ready when the grandparents are ready, like all those things can kind of cause a little chaos in the morning and in the evening. And it also causes chaos with dining reservations, getting somewhere on time in the morning. It can be a little problematic. So having everybody in the same roof has a lot of benefits, I think, in that regard.
It does. And we've had a lot of multi-generational guests. As a matter of fact, we've been home since Friday, and I've been in touch with 2 different families that we know here locally, and it's grandparents wanting to take littles and their kids to Disney World for the first time at Christmas. And the first thing I say is, "Oh, this year at Christmas, okay." And then the second thing I say is, "How do you see the accommodations working?" And there's always that idea that I can just request connecting rooms, and you have to explain to people that we can request it. We can't guarantee it. Disney just doesn't guarantee it. They do their best to honor a request, and they'll put you as near to each other as possible. But there's not a way to guarantee you're under, you have connecting rooms. And for some people, that's a deal breaker. And for some people, it's like, no, it's okay. I mean, it's okay for us to have our separate spaces. So there's lots of alternatives. And that's the best part of Disney, is there's something that'll fit almost every budget. And it does make traveling with your family a little less complicated, because so much of the logistics are thought through. Like, you don't have to think, how am I going to get 11 people to the park? You all get on a bus,
right,
or a monorail, or a boat, or however you're getting, or a Skyliner. And so there's so much of the logistical things that can give you pause that's already thought through by Disney when you go to Disney with your family. This past January, our daughter turned 40, and she said, we kept asking her, "What do you want for your birthday? It's a big birthday. Do you want a party? What are we going to do?" Us moms, we never stop celebrating our kids. And she said, "I want to go to Disney World with just you and Dad." And we went,
"Oh, that's awesome.
Listen to you." We said, "What?"
That's awesome.
We said,
I think that's fun.
And that's what she said. She said, "Mom, we've gone with the whole family." She's the oldest. And she said, and after I left to college, you went with Mike, our son, without me. And I've never gotten a trip with just y'all. It was like, seriously, you're still holding on to that?
Audie, let me tell you this, and this is the highest compliment that you can get, in my opinion. They say that a sign of a good parent and having a good childhood is if you still want to hang out with your parents when you're older.
Aw,
And
that's
so
nice.
to me, it doesn't that literally can't be a higher compliment as if your 40-year-old daughter
Aw.
wants to hang out with you. That means you've done something right. You're pretty cool to hang out with. And
It
I
helps
say that to
me not
my
be the
well, that I'm sure that helps too.
She just got her trip paid for.
Yeah.
She just extorted you again.
Yep.
Well, we took
Uh,
her, but it was funny because we had set this kind of routine by taking, the 5-year-olds when they turned 5 and the 10-year-olds when they turned 10. And she was like, I want to pick my resort. And it was like, oh, okay, we're doing this. We're doing like the whole grandkids. Okay. But we had
there
a
you go.
blast. And we have really enjoyed allowing them, the grandkids, and our daughter to have ownership in like the planning part of it. Like you said, y'all were watching videos and stuff. I mean, we let them, you know, this old school grandma had park maps that, paper ones that we folded out, and, they picked the rides they wanted to do. And way in advance, we have one more 10-year-old trip, and her booking day is actually the Monday before Thanksgiving. So we'll be booking our last 10-year-old trip.
But I'll tell you, we've already started to hear from the, now that grandkids are 14, 13, 12, hey, Mo and Get, what about an 18-year-old trip? An adventure by Disney.
Yes.
They're extorting you the right way.
I'm like, I guess I'm not retiring anytime soon.
Back to work.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I'm kind of curious, kind of going on the next thing is, how do you guys go to parks? Do you guys go to the same park? Do you go to different parks? How does that work? What's your kind of, and just typical, or what's your advice, I guess, more for people?
We tell people all the time going to someplace like Walt Disney World there's so much to do for everyone. So don't feel like you have to march around, because it's just as much fun to branch off. And like for us, we would take the littles and do like the rides that they want. I mean, ride Barnstormer like 12 times in a row, while mom and dad are off running and doing, Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain, and, doing the mountain range at Magic Kingdom, and, and then we're on the carousel and things like that. And, you plan where you meet for the meals, and you get to unpack it all, but you spend the bulk of your day together. But you can also, because that's the joy for us as grandparents, is experiencing the park through their eyes. And as you guys know, as young parents, it's fun to get away from your kids.
Well, and with staying on a Disney resort property, when it gets to be 2:00 in the afternoon and the meltdowns are starting, grandma and grandpa can take the little ones back to the resort pool, and, the kids' parents can stay and play in the parks, and we'll take the kids back and let them get a nap and get a swim. And then we'll just meet back up with everybody in the evening. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and where our adult children wanted to close down the parks, and the littles just couldn't. Well, when they were 5, they couldn't, do the close down the parks every night. We're happy to take them back to the resort and let them go night or watch the fireworks from the window in the Bay Lake Towers, and while mom and dad are still out having a fun time. It makes it a great vacation for everybody. Again, when you take the pressure off yourself to spend every second together, then it just makes it a lot of fun. And we've traveled with friends, and when our kids were younger, we've traveled with multiple families. And then I tell you, the hardest part about walking around in a large group is synchronizing bladders. It seems like you spend half of your day waiting for somebody to come out of a bathroom. And so it's like, so if you just are able to relax, do your own thing, again, it's all of those, you don't have to micromanage all the details, because it works itself out.
And to answer your question, we typically we will all head to the same park for at least the morning. And then everybody will kind of do their own thing, and maybe we'll meet up we usually will do a sit down late lunch or an early dinner where we can all come back together and swap stories and hang out. But we don't have to be in lockstep, every moment of the day. Because that's when that's when the problems typically tend to arise.
So we've been doing this long enough. Our oldest grandchild is 14. And so we've been doing this long enough that we've been going with them when fast passes were a thing. And now there's Genie Plus. And, fast pass, when you've got a large group, you need to have a runner in your family. You know what I mean? So you hand everybody, you hand one person all those tickets, and then you go run to the kiosk and go get this, and they're standing there with their 11, he's putting them into the machine and getting all the fast passes out. But with Genie Plus, and while I know there's pros and cons to both of it, and that's not what we're debating, but with Genie Plus, it makes it easier because you can do those things from your phone. And like, if there is really something that one of the grands wanted to do, we made sure that that was a priority for them. Well, because we used to think that, this would be like their one big trip, but that was out the window after they were 5. But so it's made it, I feel like traveling with them and using Genie Plus as our way to get to those must-do rides has made that part of it. We did Disneyland this July with our daughter and her family. And we couldn't have done it without Genie, because we only had 2 days, and we couldn't have done it without Genie Plus. There was just no way to see all that they wanted to see without that.
And to that end, only because it came up for me with a guest today that's doing a multi-generational, like first time Disney World trip, you really have to think through who's going to be your app person or who's going to be the Genie Plus guy.
Yeah.
And it's really important when you've got the grandparents involved. And this is not a knock on grandparents that, have trouble with the phones or whatever, but that's just the reality of the situation, is that sometimes the grandparents may not be the best with the technology. They're not the ones that want to, they don't want to spend the time on the phone. Frankly, they want to spend the time with the grandkids.
Yeah.
But you really have to think that through. I've got a client right now that grandma is the planner and the point of contact, and she loves it, but was really struggling to sign up for My Disney Experience before even downloading the app, just creating her account. And so you've really got to think through, I'm happy to teach you. That's what we do, and that's kind of the joy that we get out of this. But make sure you're thinking through who's going to be that person, because it gets even worse if you've got 8 different people trying to do it all at the same time, and all that stuff can become a nightmare. So if one person really takes the rowing oar and says, I'm going to be the one that's going to handle it this day, and get up at 7 a.m. and start booking it, or, then Uncle Tim is going to do it the next day or whatever, you can split it up throughout your vacation. But as long as somebody knows what they're doing and does the research in advance and really learns how to do it, because it's not easy even for, people that are tech savvy, I'll say, because tech savvy knows no age. But that's really important. And the one thing I want to touch on too, I think Audie and Tim, you really illustrated it really well, is the idea of slowing down. And anybody that's listened to our last 9 episodes, Chip hammers me because I'm terrible at this. My wife knows I'm terrible at this. To me, every Disney trip is this could possibly be my last trip. So I want to do everything all the time and try and maximize every little thing. And that's especially the case for people that are going for the first time with their grandkids. You want to push. Sometimes you're pushing your health or your legs to the limit, and you need to rest. So I think thinking through all those things and slowing down, splitting up, and going back to the resort, all those things that Audie and Tim kind of illustrated that they do are things that anybody can take away and learn from and have a better vacation for sure.
We try to build that into basically every trip, whether it's multi-generational or not, is to recommend that you take, a day to not do the parks, go to Disney Springs, go to one of the miniature golf attractions, just take a day at the pool, or go to the water parks. I mean,
get on the monorail and go look at all the resorts.
Ride the Skyliner.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be go pushing through the turnstiles every day. Especially when you've got little ones and old ones in the same group. I mean, you need to give everybody a chance to be able to fully enjoy the experience, and that may mean that maybe just the younger ones or young adults are doing the rope drop or the closing fireworks every night, and everyone else is doing something a little bit more mundane. But if you're willing to be flexible, you can have a really excellent time at Walt Disney World or Disneyland.
Our very first trip that we went on as a family of 4, we took his mom and dad, and his dad was a no up with the sun kind of guy.
It's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. Let's go.
Started looking around, seeing who's knocking.
It was like,
Like, geez.
and I would say, Tim, your dad, your dad.
Do something with your father.
Do something with your dad. And so literally after the first day, we would bring our little 5-year-old son home from the park. We stayed at Caribbean Beach, and we'd carry him from the bus into the resort. He would be sound asleep. We would bathe him while he slept, and we would put him in the clothes that he was going to wear the next day. And then we would put him to bed because we knew Mr. Lawley was going to be knocking on our door at 6 a.m. And then we'd carry that poor baby back to sleep, to the park, put him in a stroller for about a good 2 hours. And then he would wake up and he was good to go. But we realized that we just wore him out, and we could not convince Tim's dad that we had to slow down. I mean, I remember going our second time to Disney World and going into the American Pavilion and going, oh my gosh, I love this show, that song. I feel so proud to be an American. And he went, we did this last time. Oh, no, I napped.
It's air conditioned and dark.
I know. I was exhausted. And so that's not good to have that kind of experience. And
We are napping dads on this show at Disney. Chip is admitted to Country Bears, and I fell asleep on our last trip in the Frozen show. So we are team napping dads. That happens occasionally, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm a early riser as well, but that might be being a teacher and getting up every day. But I'm also take a break in the afternoon, so there's that balance. Now Matt sleeps in. I mean, he's got that lawyer lifestyle, show up late,
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I love every aspect of just slowing down. I've never ridden 7 Dwarfs.
Oh, wow.
I've never ridden. I don't want to wait in line for it. I just have no.
Right.
I don't need to run. I'm not going to sit there and wait. I'll go do something else and go back to the pool. One day I'll get on it.
yeah, some rides are just as much fun to watch, right?
There you
yeah.
go.
Yeah. But the important thing is to know your family. It's just to know your family. If you've got the ones that want to get up with the sun and go, then it's okay to say, well, we'll meet you there at the crack of noon.
Country Bear Jamboree at 10:30. See you there.
Yeah. And because all of that's okay, because what that creates is an opportunity to have really good quality time together, because there's always going to be a sweet spot where everybody is, in that same energy space, whether you're the late riser or the early riser or the early to bed or the late to bed, there's still going to be a time of the day that's good for everybody, and everybody will be on the same page. And so, embrace that and give everybody, space and grace to be them.
I like that, space and grace.
So we learned that, the hard way from our first trip, because, we got up at 6 a.m. with my father-in-law, but that's the
last time we took him.
it was not. But I will tell you, the next time we took him, he was much older and he didn't wake up at 6 a.m. So yeah, we've actually had a couple of trips where it was our parents, us, our kids, and grandkids.
Oh, so great. That's incredible.
Yes.
That's so much fun.
Oh, amazing.
Were there any unique challenges associated with that?
Other than the slower pace, but for us, our particular families, each time we had toddlers. And so toddlers and elderly, they kind of go on the same schedule. So
wheelchairs and
so it works. Wheelchairs and strollers, fine.
Yes.
And so that was kind of nice. But again, it was just, we kind of, instead of dinner being that time where we all were kind of in that same good space, it was lunch. And, the greats volunteered to go lay down and take naps with the grands. And so it was wonderful. We wouldn't trade those trips for anything, because it was so much fun for us to be able to watch our parents having fun with our kids and their kids. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's that whole thing about, being under the same roof, it makes it just a little bit easier to coordinate the varying foot speeds of your travel party. When you're all, have proximity, at least you gather all the chicks in one nest and before you head out in the day. And that's helpful when you've got such varying ages involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and I tell you now, for the two of us, we have my mom and my stepmom still with us, and we've lost all of our other parents. And so those photographs that we have, we always do Memory Maker. We do the cruise line when we travel with our kids. We always do the pictures, and those are some of our most fond souvenirs, and that's what we tell our guests all the time. Your best spent money is going to be the Memory Maker, because when the t-shirts are in the garage sale and the plastic toys you brought home are in the trash can, you're going to have those pictures 20 years from now when your kids are no longer under your roof, and yet they're still walking by that refrigerator and they see that picture of them and their grandparents and their parents and their kids. That picture is still on the refrigerator, and they stop and say, that was such a fun trip. That those things are the ones that are going to be the treasure chest memories that you keep with you for forever.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
such a beautiful segue there to the last part of our topic, which is, but you know what, Nick, I love it. She definitely touched
Yeah.
on it, and Memory Maker is absolutely a no-brainer for larger groups. It's such a steal, and the biggest thing is getting everybody to use it.
Yes.
And reminding people, like, even if there's a short line with the folks in the green vests, the photo pass photographers, wait in the line and take the pictures. Take the pictures as often as you can, and also do it without just the whole group. Like, if grandpa is with the kids, grandpa, stop and grab some pictures. I do that with my kids all the time. Like, I'll be taking one to the bathroom, right before you get the Tower of Terror. There's those bathrooms there on the right. And there's all lining that street there in front of Tower of Terror. There's photo pass photographers. Every time I take my kids by myself to the bathroom, I get a picture with just me and the kid. And because it's just a good moment to, an opportunity to get a photograph. And they're professionals. They do a fantastic job. Sometimes they have the opportunities to do the magic photos for the kids, just the kids alone. And it's like Audie said, you'll never regret taking the pictures. You might regret the bubble wand, but you'll never regret the photos.
And what you're going to love is, I promise you, Matt, 10 years from now, when you're looking at, middle schoolers and high schoolers, you're going to see that age progression in those pictures, because you've made it a routine that you stop and take those pictures. And I can guarantee you, when your kids are old enough to take themselves to the bathroom, they're going to stop and take pictures. And then you're going to look in your phone and go, what? They took a picture.
I specifically try with each of my kids, every time I go with them, I try to take the same picture in front of Tower of Terror for that exact reason. It's just a fun progression. It's something that I, do in particular with my kids. And I think, the biggest thing too is just encouraging, like, the different levels of the family to take pictures. It doesn't have to be the entire group, although that's fun too. But like, sometimes you just need the grandparents with the kids or whatever. And to that end, there's some other things that I'll mention that are available. Group photo sessions. Audie and Tim, have you guys ever done one of the private group photo sessions?
We have not, but this past summer we had a multi-generational family that when the parents were celebrating their 30th wedding, a big wedding anniversary, 25th, 30th, probably 30th, because they had their adult kids and all of their grands, and they did it in the morning at Magic Kingdom. And oh my word, their pictures were just stunning, absolutely stunning. And they didn't wear matching t-shirts, but they color coordinated by family. And I mean, I'm not surprised Disney's not using their photos, because they were just beautiful. They were just beautiful.
It's another thing that, like, you never hear somebody complain about it afterwards.
Right.
Like, it's always money well spent. And if you can manage it, it's during when the park is open, but it's that the photographer, kind of moves you around pretty quickly to known spots where there's not as big of crowds, and they do a really great job. And the other thing that I'll mention is, as we talked about at the beginning, the VIP tours are fantastic for larger groups because they become more affordable per person, and they're really a fun experience. But I because we're running long, I want to try and jump us into a few of the listener questions that we got this week. And then I can't leave you without doing the overrated or underrated series. So I apologize if I missed your listener question because I'm going to abbreviate it just because we're running out of time a little bit here. But and some of the stuff we touched on, like the one question we got from Christy was how can we handle different sleep schedules, especially with early risers and night owls in the group? I think Audie and Tim really gave a great example of how to do that and kind of making sure you stay slow with those things. But one that I'm really interested to hear are there any specific shows or rides or dining, any of those three, that you think lend themselves well to larger groups of people? Or do you find yourself saying like, we all want to go to this restaurant or to this show or this ride, all of us together as a family?
There's
Anything that like everybody gravitates to, you know what I mean? Everybody loves it.
everybody loves it. There's some of those restaurants that are easier for large groups, like Beer Garden. And they're one that you can get a large group, and the food is amazing, and they do have that entertainment there. And we've been surprised that our kids have really enjoyed going there. So that was one that kind of surprised us, and it's one that we do all the time when we have the grands, our kids and their kids with us. And then ride, it just depends. That's because that's kind of one of those ones that is specific to each of the kids. Like they each have their own super favorite, but truly for them recently, because of the 5-year-olds and the 10-year-old trips were kind of getting a little close together, has been Galaxy's Edge. And it's been more the experience of building the lightsaber and the droid and things like that. I mean, he's built a lot of lightsabers.
I've gone through a lot of ceremonies.
Tim, I've got 2 lightsabers on my wall. You guys can't see them because they're behind my computer screen, but
Yeah.
Well, he
I
has
feel
one.
that. There you go.
Only CPA I know that has a lightsaber in his office.
You just never know.
Yeah, well, I
You
mean,
never
the
know.
power does go out. I do have a big flashlight now, so.
Chip, are there any in particular that stick out to you when you've got kind of your larger family going?
I had one requirement for when we went with my dad, and same thing for my in-laws is we're gonna watch Happily Ever After together.
Oh,
That's I just remember going with my dad in 18. And they stayed somewhere else. My stepsister was at Disney at the same time, so they're splitting time. And I said, "Hey, I just need you at Magic Kingdom at 8:45. We're gonna line up and watch the show." And he like I'm holding my daughter at the time, and he like grabs me and he's crying. And he's like, "I don't know what it is. It's just fireworks." He said, "But it's being here with you and your kids, and it's just because he was." Long story short, my grandpa walked the land with Walt Disney at one point. So it's one of those things that he's like, your grandfather was here. Now I'm here with you. So it's one of those things. So
That's a lot of fun, and it's not necessarily a hack because it costs money, but if you've got a large group like that, definitely consider the dessert parties. We try to do that once a trip. Sometimes it's just too expensive, but it is well worth it when you've got a large group because it's so hard to get a good spot for the fireworks, and it guarantees you the spot on the hub grass, and you don't have to fight through the crowds, and you can really really enjoy that moment with your family that Chip is talking about there. I think it's really important. Like I'll never forget the first time I had my kids and my in-laws and everybody there, and it just makes it so much easier to deal with, particularly when you've got little kids, dealing with that fireworks time period when everybody's starting to get crabby and stuff. But for me, the one ride that always sticks out in particular is Tower of Terror. And it's because it's got like a nostalgia for every generation. Like, the grandparents remember taking the kids to Tower of Terror and doing it a dozen times in a day, when they were kids. And so then having the grandkids there to do it their first time. And I shared this story a little bit with Chip that we just had my 5-year-old just rode Tower of Terror for the first time.
Wow.
And for my wife's family, Tower of Terror is like the stories that they tell of going to Disney when they were kids. They would go down for soccer tournaments and they would just go to Hollywood Studios to ride Tower of Terror over and over and over again. So to me, when my daughter's getting to ride Tower of Terror for the first time, like I would love to, but we've got 2 other kids, right? So we plan to do the rider swap, which is another great tip for, these multi-generational situations. I stayed with the 2 youngest that couldn't do it. And it was a special moment for my wife's family. Her brother was there, her mom and dad, and my daughter, her first time on Tower of Terror. The problem where that story goes wrong is that my daughter wouldn't ride it again. So when the time came to swap, it was not going to happen. And so I still haven't ridden it with her yet. I know that I'll get to, but that it's just that's a ride in particular that's been there for so long, and it's so fun and has so much meaning to so many different people that I think it's one. And you all get to ride it together, right? Like, so you get the family photo with Memory Maker and those things. So that one's special to me. And the one that I'll mention that I think just for us, when we've done multi-generational trips, Disney Springs is one thing to think through a little bit more with your crowd or your family before you go there, just because, you can have a granddad that hates to shop and an aunt that loves to shop, and it can, there's something there for everybody. Absolutely. But try and make sure you think through kind of what you're doing there and what restaurants you're going to and stuff like that. Cause it can be a blast for grandpa to take, the youngest to the Lego store, but it can get kind of crazy quickly too. So that's something to think about when you're planning.
Definitely.
Well, so our last listener question from Erica is, how do you manage transportation within the parks and from the airport to the parks, especially if you've got family members that can't handle walking a lot? What do you do for your transportation? So Audie and Tim, I guess, to break that question down, how do you guys typically handle with a large group getting from the airport to the resort? And then once you're in the bubble, I think, you handle Disney transportation, but what are your thoughts on the airport
I
transportation?
got a precursor to it. Where are you flying from with all of your all the generations? Where are they flying from, and do you guys get around the same time? That's kind of my.
So we all live in Texas, but there was a spell where our daughter and her husband and our granddaughter lived in DC. So we would always plan. We always try to arrive around the same time. And when you're coming from the same state, that's not so hard. But so just know that we always tell each other, we can wait up to an hour for each other because it makes getting from the airport to the resort a little easier. And we always do private transfers. And we do the private transfers because I have control over the time. And I know that sounds like a control freak, and it's not. It's that I am able to have a little more say in, like, I need car seats. I need a car that seats this many. This is how much luggage we're bringing. And we have a relationship with a really great private transfer company in Orlando. And I've been using
Shout them out. Who do you typically use?
Orlando Sedan Express, and we have been
Okay.
using them for years and years and years. It is a small business owner. Shawan Mustafa is his name. He has been in this industry for forever. He has ridden the ups and downs. His drivers are very professional, and he can accommodate a party of, we've done Mercedes Sprinter vans, we've done limos, we've done SUVs. There was one trip where we went on a girls' trip, and my granddaughter was 7. She ran the kids race, and then we ran some of the Run Disney races. But she had to go. My granddaughter had to go home early. He even drove off with my little grand screaming out the window, "Please don't make me go!" And he was such a trooper. And so we have used Shawan for a really long time. A little harder if you use the Mears transfers, if you're a large group, because the truth is you may get split up. A bus can only hold so many.
It's got weights associated to it, and so if you got little kids, that can be frustrating. You're also not going directly to your resort. I'm a huge advocate of the private transportation. It's not, especially when you talk about larger groups, a Sprinter van.
It's more.
It's not that more expensive. Yeah, and sometimes it is a wash.
Yeah, when you get to be about 5 guests traveling, private transfers are about the same as what you would pay with Mears transfers. It might be 6 or 7 now that they've got a different pricing. But anyway, and the other thing I would say to your listeners is, if you are comfortable with ride shares and that's the way you get around, our one experience that has happened to us more than once in all of our travels is, be sure you order a car big enough for luggage, because we've been turned away. We've been turned away. They're pulling up to the airport, and yet they look at us like, "Oh, you have luggage?" So we have literally been told, I can't put all that in my car. And yes, we are overpackers. So just know if that's going to be your choice, which is a very popular choice. And again, grace and space. Everybody figure out what works for you, for your families, and work your plan. But just know that there's some things that just don't go as smoothly. Like if you're a business traveler and you've gone to a business conference and you've got one bag and you do an Uber, it's no big deal. You've got a family of 7 and you call for an Uber. Well, the car might fit 7, but 7 family members are going to have a lot of luggage. So just
Yeah.
always think through those things.
And I think that's the beauty of why, for me in particular, I love going to Walt Disney World is that like you don't have to bring the car seats. You know, the stroller can be a pain and you want to make sure you bring a stroller, but sometimes you don't even have to bring a stroller. Like we only bring the pop-up stroller so that we can use it at the airport, and then we rent a stroller so we don't have to lug that to the airport. So when you talk about having 3 kids with no car seats, no stroller, it makes the bags a lot more manageable. And then the private transportation, like a lot of times, you mentioned Orlando Sedan Express, which is something that I'll link in the show notes for anybody that's interested. And obviously, if you use a travel agent, Audie or Tim or myself will help you book all those things. And then I use Happy Limo. I've used them for a long time and have had nothing but great experience with them too. And, you know, they come inside and help you get the bags off the cart and take you, you know, there's a private, I'll call it an alley, but it's kind of underground where they can take you and you get straight into their car and you don't have to deal with, you know, the Uber and going out into the street and all that stuff. It's a lot safer for kids. It's a lot easier. I think there's a lot of benefits there.
You get the thing that we preach to people is that, you know, Shawan's going to give us, you're going to know who your driver is. You're going to have a picture of your driver. So the security and the safety aspect of it. And then that, you know, the fare includes a stop if you want it at a Publix or one of the local stores. If you forgot something on your trip or you want to buy water or whatever, it's, you know, they can pull in real quickly.
Starbucks.
I mean, that's, you know, as a game changer too, when you've got a big group and you just want to get, you know, a case of the cereal for the kids in the morning and some milk. A lot easier to do it, hit the ground, and you don't have, you know, that transfer option anymore.
Or adult.
Oh yes, yeah.
I had a driver stop on our last trip at Starbucks for me, and he was a saint.
It's well worth the money. I mean, it's a non-negotiable thing for us when we travel because of that convenience and that knowing that you've got someone waiting for you, as opposed to having to hope the app is going to work and that you're going to get a car that fits your party size. And is it going to be somebody that's going to have the radio cranked to 11 or or whatever? So
no doubt. And I'm going to hold the remainder of our listener questions for next week. I promise we'll get to you. I'm sorry if we didn't get to you tonight, but we will make sure we get those questions answered. I want to jump into, this is my favorite segment. And sometimes we all agree and it's not controversial, but it's still fun. So we're going to talk overrated or underrated. The only rule is you can't say that everything is underrated. First one we're going to do overrated or underrated. Audie and Tim, you're going to kick us off. Animal Kingdom Lodge, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Yeah, it's underrated.
And why do you think it's underrated?
We love it. It's our favorite resort. You started with our favorite resort. It is our absolute favorite resort. And we happen to think that the inconvenience of the one way to transfer there is something that is overcome the moment you step into that beautiful lobby.
Yeah, the charm of being isolated and you're not really isolated. I mean, it does feel that way because it is the furthest transfer that you have from any of the resorts to the theme parks. But that remoteness and isolation just really is welcome when you're on vacation. I mean, you want to unplug, and I think that's just the perfect place for it.
Chip, what do you think?
Well, since you didn't say Kidani or Jumbo, you said the Animal Kingdom Lodge. You put them all
We're
in
saying
one.
Jumbo. We're not going into the Kidani conversation tonight.
Then it's underrated. It's got the best buffet at Boma. It's got the best. I think it's one of the best pools. Just it's a beautiful resort. You walk in there and there's a giraffe. There's zebras. It's a day. You could spend a whole day there just hanging out. The bar right there, right on mid-level between the lobby and Boma is awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. It is underrated. It's one of the best resorts. especially if you're doing just a staycation. Like if you're just staying there and you don't go to a park, it's probably
yeah.
the best resort for that.
Agreed.
I'm going to say it's underrated, mostly because we're excluding Kidani for the purpose of this conversation. Just because I have icks about Kidani. That Kidani's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but it's got some downsides that Jumbo doesn't have. Jumbo has all the food you need. It has the Mara, so that's a big difference that you don't have at Kidani. And if you have little kids, you need that cafeteria food at your resort for last minute snacks and stuff like that. So I agree. I think it's underrated, and mostly I think it's underrated because the price on the deluxe side tends to be lower than what I think it should be. I always feel like I just quoted somebody, Audie, you were talking about late December. Seems like there's like a Disney like rush to get in before the end of the year right now. But there always just seems to be where I'm scrolling through the pricing, and Animal Kingdom Lodge sticks out as being underpriced to me. So to me, that illustrates that it's underrated. It may not be getting the respect that it deserves. Very similar to my feel about the People Mover, but that's a different conversation too. So jumping into our restaurant, overrated or underrated, be our guest.
Overrated.
I'm going to need to agree,
You
unfortunately.
can't plead the fifth, okay? You have to answer.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to say, no, it's overrated. I mean, it's good. It's just not.
And for those of you that are listening for the first time or whatever, our overrated or underrated, like we're Disney fans. Like we're not going to tell you not to go there because we absolutely think you should try Be Our Guest. That doesn't mean that we're saying it's a bad restaurant or anything like that. It's just in the context of, how either the Disney community feels about it or in general, is it overrated or underrated? So that's our disclaimer, is that we're definitely we're a positive podcast. So we're staying on that side of things. Chip, what do you think?
At its current state, it is overrated. Back when they had the lunch and it was a quick service credit, it was the most underrated because it was just walking in there. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The food was pretty good, but now with the prefix menu, I think it's overpriced. It's not really worth it, but it is one of those maybe that one time, if you're a diehard Beauty and the Beast fan, you need to do it. But for us, it's overrated.
I'm in the same boat that it's overrated, but it's also something that if you're going for the first time, to me, Cinderella's Royal Table or Be Our Guest should be a priority, especially if you have a daughter. And that's not to say my son loves Beauty and the Beast and he loved it in there, but I think it can be special, the princess opportunities to, be in the castle and stuff like that. And the theming in there is really, really great. But to me, it's lacking in the character engagement department, which I think is a little frustrating. I think if you're paying that price point, the meal should be outstanding and it's good, but it's not going to blow you away. It's not something where I would be like, if it were, here in Chicago and I had that price for that meal, I probably wouldn't be edging to go back because it just doesn't knock your socks off. So to me, you need to have the makeup for that be in the engagement from the Beast or having Belle come in or whatever. I think would really go a long way in that front. But I do think everybody should try it, and it's definitely worth doing once for sure. So let's jump into our last one. This one's kind of fun. I honestly, I'm not sure how I'm going to answer this one. Overrated or underrated Space Mountain?
Overrated. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I don't even ride it anymore. It's too jerky for me.
That's fair.
It's underrated for me, especially at Disneyland, because it's a completely different ride system than it is in Walt Disney World. But I love them both, and I think, it's a roller coaster in the dark. You just can't. How can you not love that? It's just like it's just a rite of passage. When your kids get old enough and tall enough to ride, that's the benchmark that you're shooting for. Oh, I want to ride Space Mountain, and so I view it as underrated.
We have
Tim, I'll ride it with you, Tim, when I see you.
Yes, we have a rule when we're together. If it's just the two of us, I'll ride anything once. And we have more pictures in our memory maker of us on Space Mountain. He's like, and I'm going, let's just get this over with. So yeah, you're on, Matt. Okay.
There we go. Chip, what do you think? Overrated or underrated?
So I would have said overrated until this summer. Being 6'6", I'm a large human being. I played offensive line in college. I rode it with my kids and I had a blast. I fit in it. I just sit in the back seat. I don't know if my butt touched the ground, but it was fun. It's a great ride. I think it's underrated.
I think it's underrated just because it's so overlooked a lot of times, and also just the outside aesthetic of it is something that I think is not as appreciated as it should be. It's gorgeous, and next to Tron, with the way that the lighting works at night, it's a gorgeous area of the park, and it's definitely something that is still nostalgic to, I think, anybody from our generation and up. We know that grew up going to Disney. My wife and I did a date night at an after hours event, and I think it was the first thing that we rode. And we had a blast together on it. And it's
just
not
so
something.
iconic. I mean,
It
it
is.
still looks futuristic, even though it was built in 77.
Yeah.
It's not that fast.
No, it's not. And if you ever see it with the lights on, occasionally, if you're on the people mover, that you'll go through and the lights will be on. And when you see the skeleton of the ride in the light, it's like, oh, well, that's not very cool.
Well, and here's the thing.
It's really just a kiddie ride, but you turn off the lights and turn on the music, it gets a lot scarier.
Yeah. You hear everybody talk. It's so underappreciated because everybody wants to talk about Jungle Cruise and Pirates and Haunted Mansion. And I'm like, Space Mountain is as fun, if not more fun, than those rides. And you don't hear it talked about as often. So to me, it's not up there with the People Mover in my disrespected rides category. I think the People Mover is the ultimate ride that gets not enough love, but it's definitely underrated to me. And I'm glad we all are somewhat on the same page there.
I will say it is the third of the mountains in Magic Kingdom. In my opinion, I think it's number 3 of the 3 mountains.
Well, it can't be number 3 because it's still standing and another one's not.
Well, you know what I mean.
only 2 of those 3 have survived. So, but I can agree with that. I love Big Thunder, so that's fair too. But that's gonna wrap it up. Thanks so much, Audie and Tim, for joining us. We had a lot of fun with you guys tonight. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on social media or via email. I can be found at Adventures of a Disney Dad. Audie and Tim, where can people find you?
Go for it.
We're on Facebook, and you can find us at, what is it called? I am not the social media girl.
Tim and Audie.
It's okay.
Lawley. Tim and Audie Lawley, Land and Cruise Travel Planners.
Okay, there you go. Tim and Audie Lawley,
Travel
Land and Cruise Travel Planners. And I think you guys are on Instagram, right?
Yes.
Lawley Travel.
Yep.
Lawley Travel on Instagram. And
Yes.
and you can find them over at the Magic for Less, and I'll have links to their bios in the show notes where you can reach out to them if you'd like to get a quote. Chip, where can everybody find you?
On Instagram at Robinson Dad Life, and then on Twitter at Chip Robinson. I can't. It's like calling. It's like calling Splash Mountain Tiana's. I can't do it. I'm just.
There you go. And if you're interested in having me, Audie, or Tim assist you in planning your next Universal or Disney vacation, please feel free to reach out to us. All the links to get a free quote from any of us are going to be in the show notes. Our services are completely free to you, and we'd love to help you plan your next dream vacation, whether it be multi-generational or solo travel. We love you all. If you have a moment, and you could follow, subscribe, like, and review the podcast on whatever platform you prefer to listen, we would greatly appreciate the support. We know you have a lot of choices when it comes to the content you consume, and we hope this episode brightened your day a bit. And thank you for spending some time with us. So have a great week.
See ya.
See ya.